Hey guys, my name is Alan and my concentration is in finance.
Hi, my name is Nayeli, and my concentration is in human resources.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Bandyman and my concentration is in finance. And today we're going to be covering the Florida Startup Facility. So I'll be focusing on the supply chain side of operations management. So the Florida site is Steinbeck's newest facility, and it's been operating about 18 months away from launch. Because it's a startup, it doesn't have an established supplier network yet that's causing sourcing delays, inconsistent deliveries, and a lot of dependency on contractors. On top of that, the site is experiencing ERP supplier onboarding issues, seeing things like billing errors, late payments, and mismatched data, which are already damaging vendor relationships before the facility even opens. For my section, I'm focusing on supply chain strategy as my major concept because the Florida site's biggest operational risks are tied directly to supply chain immaturity. My mitigating subconcept is supplier relationship management, or SRM, combined with ERP supplier onboarding, because without strong vendors, relationships, and clean data, none of the supply chain strategies the site needs, like dual sourcing, sustainability, planning, or inventory control, can actually work. And as a business major with a finance minor, I'll also highlight how these supply chain decisions affect costs, cash flow, and long term financial stability. We can move on to the next slide. When we talk about supply chain strategy for a startup facility, the main goal is to build a system that's resilient, cost effective, and able to scale as the site grows. One of the biggest pieces of that is dual sourcing. Research shows that relying on a single supplier increases disruption risk, especially in regions like Florida where hurricanes and weather events can interrupt logistics. Dual sourcing adds some short-term costs, but it significantly reduces the risk of production downtime, which is far more expensive in the long run. Another part of the strategy is supplier diversification. This means balancing local suppliers who offer shorter lead times with regional or national suppliers who provide capacity and backup options. This is a classic operations trade off. More suppliers means more coordination costs, but also more resilience. From a finance perspective, these decisions directly affect cost stability, risk exposure, and working capital. A resilient supply chain protects the company from emergency spending, rushed shipments, and production losses. We can move on to the next one. So, supplier relationship management is critical for the Florida site because the supplier base is still forming. SRM is all about building long term partnerships with key vendors so that performance, quality, and communication stay consistent. Right now, the Florida site is dealing with late payments, onboarding errors, and inconsistent communication, all of which weakens supplier trust. SRM helps fix that by creating structure, things like supplier segmentation, performance scorecards, and regular business reviews. From an operations standpoint, SRM reduces variability, improves quality, and supports continuous improvement, all of which are essential for a startup facility trying to stabilize its processes. Also, from a finance angle, strong SRM reduces the total cost of ownership. When suppliers from the company have clear expectations, you have fewer errors, fewer disputes, and more predictable costs. Do the fourth slide. The last major concept is ERP supplier onboarding, which is really the backbone of supply chain execution. At the Florida side, onboarding issues are causing billing errors, late payments, and delivery delays, and that directly damages supplier relationships. Clean master data, things like accurate lead times, payment terms, and supplier IDs is essential for generating accurate MRP signals. Without that, the site can't plan production, inventory, or procurement effectively. This also ties into sustainability. Better planning reduces waste, prevents overordering, and cuts down on expensive rush shipments. It supports fiscal sustainability by lowering administrative costs and improving cash flow. It supports longevity by enabling better risk planning, and it supports ecological sustainability by reducing unnecessary transportation and excess inventory. In conclusion, strengthening the ERP onboarding and SRM gives the Florida site the operational foundation it needs to execute its broader supply chain strategy. When vendor relationships are strong and data is accurate, the site can reduce risk, control costs, and build a stable launch path for the new facility. And then lastly, these are the academic and industry sources that support the concepts that I discussed today.
So for my portion of the project, I focus on HR challenges at the Steinbeck, Florida startup site. My three main topics are workforce planning and labor modality, safety and training, and HR workforce development. The mitigating factor I focused on is standardized onboarding and training. You can move on to the next slide. Workforce planning is really about making sure labor needs are aligned with the organization's goals as production grows. According to Rework, manufacturing workforce planning becomes more difficult when demand increases, but labor structures aren't fully built yet, which is common in startup environments. I also use a source from Faster Capital, which explains that startups often rely on contractors because they need flexibility early on. And that fits the Florida site well since it has very few full-time employees. While contractors help the site stay flexible, they also make workforce planning and coordination more complex. Labor modality also adds another challenge. The Florida site uses on-site, hybrid, and remote workers. ADP points out that while hybrid and remote work expand the talent pool, they also increase compliance responsibilities, especially when workers are located in different states. From an HR and IT perspective, worker information has to be tracked carefully through HR systems and ERP tools. From an operations and supply chain standpoint, hybrid roles can help with planning and coordination as long as everything is managed correctly. You can move on to the next slide. Safety training and onboarding are especially important at a startup manufacturing site. OSHA makes it clear that employers are responsible for providing job-specific training to all workers, including contractors. This matters a lot at the Florida site because startup environments and contractor use both increase safety risk. OSHA also explains that proper training helps reduce workplace injuries and legal risk. Another source I use is from Training Industry, which talks about how standardized onboarding improves safety, consistency, and retention. When everyone receives the same onboarding and training, workers are more likely to follow safety procedures and understand expectations. From an operations perspective, fewer safety issues means fewer production disruptions, and from an IT perspective, having digital training records helps with compliance tracking and audits. You can move on to the next slide. Thank you. The research connects directly to my business human resources degree. Workforce planning, training, and compliance are core HR responsibilities, especially in manufacturing environments where labor directly affects operations. I also used a workforce development resource from NIST, which emphasizes investing in employee skills and long-term workforce development. NIST explains that developing internal talent can reduce reliance on contractors over time and help create a more stable workforce. Overall, these sources helped me understand how HR supports operations, compliance, and long-term sustainability while also building skills that are important for real-world HR roles, especially in training and development. Sorry. These are the sources I used for my portion of the project, which included Rework, Faster Capital, ADP, OSHA, Training Industry, NIST, and Microsoft Copilot, which helped with research and the slide creation.
My three main topics were sales priorities, global distribution, ROI, and business continuity planning. Because this is a startup site with about 18 months to launch, my focus on how we can grow sales and scale operations without taking unnecessary financial or operational risk. From a finance perspective, that means understanding where automation really pays off, where it might slow us down, and how we protect the business from disruptions while we're still building out the site. I'll start with our sales and distribution priorities, then move into our automation risk and return on investment, and finish with our business continuity planning for the Florida location. For sales and distribution, the best approach for this startup facility is a phased rollout with a controlled market entry. We don't want to launch at full scale on day one, especially while the site, suppliers, and systems are still stabilizing. Instead, we begin with a targeted audience, like local wine tasting rooms and nearby customers. This lets us introduce the product to people in the area, gather feedback, and refine our processes before we can expand more broadly. It also helps us protect quality. A smaller rollout reduces the risk of large-scale issues or negative reactions if something goes wrong early on. From a fiscal sustainability standpoint, this strategy helps us prevent excess inventory and ensures our vineyards and productions can actually meet demand. To support this, we use CRM systems to track customer orders and avoid over-promising when production can't support it. And at production level, MES tracking gives us real-time visibility into batches and output, which helps us prevent overruns and material waste. Next is the return on investment and risk of automation at the Florida site. In the short term, we expect return on investment from automation to be moderate at launch, not high. A big reason is that ERP supplier onboarding issues are still creating upstream delays. Automation can't fix bad or late data, and it can't make materials necessarily arrive exactly on time. We also rely heavily on contractors, which increases training and change management costs. When you introduce new automated systems in a workforce that's not fully permanent, you spend more time and money getting people up to speed, and that can slow the launch readiness. That said, there are clear strengths in targeted light automation. For example, warehouse tools like barcode and RFID scanning and automated inventory reconciliation help minimize missed shipments and provide visibility even when suppliers are unstable. Automated contractor access, scheduling, and compliance systems can reduce administrative overhead and improve security. Overall, the main ROI drivers are lower labor hours on repetitive tasks, and faster, more consistent qualification and quality processes. But the key is to be selective and phased so automation supports the startup instead of overwhelming it. Finally, business continuity planning is critical for this Florida site. Encouraging workplace continuity is essential because we're dealing with a contractor heavy workforce in a high risk environment. One major tactic is a cross-training matrix to reduce single points of failures. If only one person knows how to run a key process and there's a contractor who leaves, operations can stall. Cross-training ensures multiple people can step in. We also need emergency staffing agreements with agencies so we can quickly bring in qualified workers during disruptions. Because many workers are remote or hybrid, we need remote working continuity protocols like VPN redundancy and strong access controls so people can keep working securely even if there are network issues or location issues as well. Florida's environmental risks like storms and flooding mean we also need backup generators, fuel contracts, and flood mitigation systems. These measures help maintain production and keep the facility running during extreme weather. Over time, low redundancy dependency on contractors will strengthen continuity and improve ROI because we'll have more stable long-term knowledge and capability inside the organization. Thank you for your time as that wraps up our presentation on bringing up our Florida startup facility.